This is Daniel Howat from Next Best Picture. Michael, how you doing today, sir?
I'm good, Daniel. Yourself?
I am doing well. I've been so excited to talk with you ever since I saw the movie. It is such a blast. And look, I'm American, so such a surprise for me discovering Robbie Williams along with so many other people. I'm sure that coming up with the concept to portray Robbie Williams as a monkey is one thing, but actually making it work is entirely a different story. Was there a moment that you realized, wait, this could actually work?
Yeah, actually, the moment for me was I did previs, which is like watching a bad computer game version of a scene, and I for Showman I did all the musical numbers in previs because my background's in animation, and it makes me feel very comfortable knowing what I'm going in to shoot. But it's also great for all the heads of department to go, this is what I want, this is what's in my head. So I did the same for Better Man, and really feel, even in its plastic version, of looking at this little tiny monkey sort of singing as his dad drives away on the bus, you're just like, oh man, I'm feeling something. And then my way at the other end, which is sort of the bookends of the film, again, I was like, oh, I'm actually getting emotional watching this. And you think, if I'm getting emotional watching the previs, this is 100% going to work once it's all filmed and done photographically,
But I know that studios didn't necessarily feel the same way, and that was a bit of a challenge to get the funding. I'm sure that struggle was difficult. But in what ways did making this independently help unleash your creativity or allow you to tell this story more exactly the way you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, there's always different models, and this model was an independent film, and I think it allowed us to be probably bolder and probably a little cruder and a little more faithful to Rob's real story, I think that a lot of work gets watered down, and I think that we didn't need to worry about that. And I feel that that's a real strength of the film. I think that audiences are a bit tired of watching projects that have been sanitized, because you sit there and you go, I know I'm not getting the full story. I don't think anyone who watches Better Man goes, I'm being shortchanged. I'm sure there's a darker moment in this guy's life. But I do think that it's more relatable. When you are honest about someone's life, you, as an audience, go, well, yeah, I mean, there are things that I'm ashamed of as well. There's things that, I wish I'd never done or I wish I'd never said. And it makes you think back on those moments,
Yeah, and what I love about Better Man is, and that separates it from so many other biopics, is how much this is really from Robbie's point of view. It's really from inside his brain. Did you see this film as a sort of autobiography? I mean, Robbie didn't write the film, but because so much of it is from his perspective, did you see it in a sense of helping him sort of make his autobiography in a sense?
I mean, it was based off a year and a half of sitting there talking with Rob. So there's a lot of his voice in the film, which is why I used some of those from the original recording, the voiceover in the final film. So those original recordings form the basis of the entire script. And so it feels very personal, I think the other thing that helps with that feeling is the exploration of both his external life and his internal life. And I think that's kind of another thing that makes the film unique, because it's not often in musical biopics that you get to explore both the internal workings and the external life. And I thought that was really important in telling this story, was to, look at those mental health challenges that Rob faced while ascending to fame. And I think now that's something that is really prevalent in today's society due to social media. It used to be just confined to those who were famous that had the whole world judging them. And now the truth is it's everybody.
you said you used some of the actual recordings that you had made before diving into what was that throughout the whole thing, or was it just a couple snippets that made it into the final cut?
No, there's definite moments, like the end speech that he gives. That whole thing is taken from those original recordings.
Oh wow, wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible. Well, one thing that helps this movie shine so much is Jonno's performance. It is just stunning. How did you help him? This is a very unique role to take on, of course. How did you help him unlock this performance, both playing this, larger than life showman and doing it through such unconventional means?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we were just very fortunate. Jonno is such an exceptional actor. His bravery to dive in and just expose himself take after take after take, emotionally, I think is the power of the film. Um, a lot of credit has to go to Simon Gleeson, who is one of the writers, but he also worked with Jonno and the other actors. Um, he's an actor himself, so and we would sort of do this divide and conquer thing where in rehearsals we would just be like, let's look at this scene, and and Jonno would just step up, and I kind of feel like if in the same way that I can't see the film, I could never see the film any other way than with a monkey. I could never see anyone giving a performance quite like what Jonno did, to the point where Robbie points to scenes and goes, "Oh, you used my original performance from Nebworth," and I go, "No, that's Jonno." I mean, the number of times Robbie has mistaken Jonno's performance for him is sort of testimony to how incredible the performance is.
Did they meet much throughout this process, before, during, after? I mean, was there much learning there to help develop his performance?
There was so Jonno's been a Robbie fan his whole life, so he's had a lifetime of study. Then, obviously, once he knew he had the role, he went back and became quite, obsessive about watching the sequences that we were specifically recreating. And then on top of that, there was only a very short time because we found Jonno very late in the process. So he was actually cast 10 days before we started filming. So he had to sort of cram all of his homework, including meeting Robbie during rehearsal. And I think what was great is that, Robbie is an oversharer naturally. And Jonno speaks about he could learn everything about Robbie the performer, but it wasn't until he met Robbie that he got to really understand what's going on inside. And I think that's really important because so much of this film shows that side of Rob.
You talked about Rob watching certain sequences. Was there a particular sequence you were most nervous for Robbie to watch?
I mean, the entire film. I just showing him the film. I'd show him, snippets along the way when I'd finish a sequence. I made a rule I didn't want to show him anything without the monkey, but then, as a rule, by the time I'm showing it to him, it's too late to change it. We've done all the work. So the first time he watched the entire film from start to finish is the most stressful viewing I've ever had. I didn't watch the screen at all. I just sat there staring at him as he watched the film. And I was just sure that he was going to point to something. It's one thing to sort of sign off on a script, words on a page. It's another thing to see it projected large with Dolby Atmos blasting around you. And he didn't change. He didn't give a single note. He didn't change one shot of the film. And again, I'm very grateful because I don't know many other stars that would allow themselves to be portrayed in such, unfavorable light. But I do believe that when you go to those dark places, you actually feel the light so much more. So that is the payoff, right? The payoff is that it makes for a much more emotionally satisfying narrative.
Is there anything about working with Robbie for all this time that has surprised you as you've gotten to know him and gotten to know his story?
Um, he always, I was quite dismissive about his ability to sing. And in working on the film and stripping back, the tracks to the sort of isolated vocals that we were ending up using in certain spots, I was really blown away about how good his singing voice is. Which he doesn't really like me saying that, because he's like, what do you think I am? And I was like, I know, but this is actually really beautiful. But that was a surprise. And it is the second thing. I think his willingness to allow the less favorable parts of his life to be shown. I think that's something I'm very grateful for, and also something that is surprising. I was just sure that he was going to make us take some shots out.
What did you think he was going to cut? Did you have? I'm sure you had something in your brain that was like, he's not going to like this.
No, there's so many. Literally, I have a list of things that I thought he's not going to like that. He looks like an absolute prick, Whether it was the way he spoke to Nicole, or like that. I mean, that scene on the couch where he's like, after she's got number one and he's jealous, and I mean, it's really uncomfortable to watch. I find it uncomfortable, and I'm not him. So, but to be fair, he was very protective of anything with Nicole, and he made us clear everything with Nicole first, both in script form and show her the material. And she was just amazing. She was so supportive of the film, and again, very, very fortunate, because that's a very deeply personal part of the story that they're letting us tell.
Yeah, of course, those dramatic moments hit really well. And then there are so many unforgettable music sequences as well that really stun. Of course, I mean, we have to talk about Rock the DJ. That sequence is just incredible. And it's all portrayed in one take with such an intricate, complex sequence like that. Where do you get started on designing that? Is it just you sort of imagining? I know you said you do previs for the whole thing, but where does that process get started? Is it you and the DP, choreographer? How do you all work together to make this happen?
So Ashley Wallen, the choreographer, and Jenny Griffin, his assistant choreographer, and it's a lot of going down to Regent Street and just shooting it out in the middle of the night, with people yelling at us, "Is that for TikTok?" Like, no. And sort of, the great thing about the world we live in now is that you can pick up your phone and shoot an idea out. And so that's what we do. We just go down on iPhones and just shoot it out and cut it together. And, after a while you start seeing bits of the idea and you go, that's it, and then you work on the other bits that aren't as strong. But, it's all about iterations. You just do so many different iterations. Something like She's the One, working out that choreography and those transitions into the moments where you see their relationship playing out in the future. The number of times that we shot that out and edited that together, that was probably the most of all the numbers that had the highest amount of iterations to get it to a place where we were like, that's it. And then in all of those cases, we would then hand that video viz over to Weta, and they would pre-viz it out in the right space, in the right setting, in the right lighting conditions. And then we would evaluate what it would be in 3D with the proper model of Regent Street that's, the correct scale. So we'd be able to say, what does it look like with 200 people for that end shot? What does it look like 300 people? And then we're like, okay, we're going to need 500 people to take us all the way around that bend to make it look like that sea of people just goes on forever.
So do you shoot the entire film on an iPhone, or just the complicated sequences?
Entire film.
Entire film. And you cut it together as a film? Wow.
So I did that for Showman, and I did it for this film, and it's really just for myself to have a little sketch. And by the way, it sounds quite elaborate shooting the entire film. I mean, some of the scenes are literally shot, in a bedroom or in an office. Just whenever you can grab anyone who's an actor and just be like, say these lines to this person. But yeah, this sort of sketched version of the film in its entirety, so that you can start getting a sense of the rhythm of the film.
Well, I know, you've started out, you've been doing music videos and commercial work for years before moving into features. And lots of successful directors have started out in music videos, but not all of them, stick to music-driven films in the way that you have thus far in your career. What about musicals and music-driven pictures calls to you?
I mean, I love what musicals allow in terms of storytelling. I think it's something really powerful when you can just sing your inner thoughts and feelings. I think I just love that narratively. It's the free pass that you get with musicals and with Shakespeare in soliloquy. You can just literally tell you what I'm thinking and feeling. But I also I don't think I'll always break into song musicals. I love music storytelling, and Quentin Tarantino, when he makes a film, that music plays such a big part in the style of his storytelling, to the place where he's writing the script with that soundtrack in mind. The Mission with Ennio Morricone's score. These are music-driven films, and they would not be the same film without that music. So for me, that's what I love. I love thematic sort of, narratives that have a great musical drive to them.
And of course, your first film, Greatest Showman, was one of those. What did you learn from Greatest Showman? You've been in the industry for a long time, but that was your first feature. What were some specific learnings that you took into Better Man that helped you be even more prepared for this film?
I mean, such a list. I mean, the longest list you can ever imagine, because you do something for the first time and you watch it back and you're like, oh, I wish I'd done that. And I should have done that better. And it's good, but it's not great. And you have such a laundry list of things that you need to do better. I'll give you one, which was sound. The sound design in The Greatest Showman is terrible. It doesn't exist. It doesn't have any rhythm. It's not leaning into the narrative. There is so much more that should have been done on the sound design in The Greatest Showman. It was just a fundamental failure on my part. And yet, when you look at Better Man, the sound design is such a big part of the storytelling. And that was a very conscious lesson learnt on Showman.
Well, before I let you go, musicals have been so successful over the last few years, from Greatest Showman to Wicked and others in between. And yet studios still seem scared of musicals, and even for many films, hiding that they're musicals
Yeah.
in the marketing. In your experience with both of your films, what do you think? Where do you think this fear comes from? This fear of musicals?
I don't know. I remember they showed me an edit of the trailer for The Greatest Showman, and there's no one singing in it. And I went, why are you hiding that it's a musical? And they said, well, not everyone likes musicals, Michael. And I go, well, then they really shouldn't be going to this film. Like, I don't know what to tell you. It's a musical. I don't know. There's something very apologetic that people feel about musicals, where they need to sort of be very much on the back foot. Whereas I think the truth is the musicals that I love are very front-footed, and they're very proud that they're a musical, and you love them for it, But there is definitely a fear around musical storytelling, and I come up against it all the time. But for me, I think it is probably because there is also just as many bad musicals as there are good musicals, and the bad musicals really turn people off. And I think that when musicals are done right, they just soar, They are. I always say that you should sing when words no longer suffice. So you get to a certain point, and your emotion is at boiling point, and you break into euphoria and you sing. Or inversely, you're taken into the depths of despair, and at that low point, there is no other way to express how broken you feel other than to sing. And when musicals do that, they are magical.
Well, that is what I experienced in Better Man. I think it's phenomenal, and I'm also thrilled that the marketing has not hidden that this is a musical. So I'm excited for more people to see it. Michael, thank you so much for the film and for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. It's been great talking to you.